The Candid Frame is supported by donations by listeners just like you. Help us to bring you great conversations with great photographers. Support the show today with your monthly contribution through our Patreon effort at patreon.com/The Candid Frame, or click on the link in the show notes or the website at thecandidframe.com. Thank you.
This episode of The Candid Frame is sponsored by Storyblocks. It's the first and only subscription-based stock media company that offers unlimited downloads of member library content for a modest annual fee of just $149 a year per site, while providing its contributing artists 100% of the sales revenue from their photographs, video, or audio. To find out more, visit storyblocks.com/candid. This is Ibarrian X, and this is The Candid Frame. One of photography's greatest strengths is its ability to shine a light onto the darker areas of human nature. There's Lewis Hines' work on child labor during the early part of the 20th century, or W. Eugene Smith's documentation of mercury poisoning on the village of Minamata in Japan, or Mary Ellen Mark's work on homeless children in the Northwest. These and many other photographers like them use the camera to turn our gaze onto something that might otherwise be too easily ignored. Ada Trillo's work, documenting the lives of prostitutes on the U.S.-Mexican border, started off as an examination of immigration issues, but quickly turned into an exploration of how some women are led into a life of violence, drug abuse, and premature death. These photographs and the stories behind them help us to reconsider our assumptions and judgments of the women who become lost to this world. Well, Ada, welcome to The Candid Frame. It's a real pleasure to have you. Your work is very fascinating, and as soon as I saw it, I knew that I wanted to have a chance to talk with you and share it with my audience. But one of the things I wanted to start off with, though, is that the project started as a result of your interest in wanting to do a project on immigration.
Correct.
Tell me what sort of inspired you to explore that with your work.
Well, I'm from Juarez, and I'm Mexican. So when Trump made on his campaign made the comments that all Mexicans were criminals and rapists. I don't know if you remember that comment.
Yeah, you can't forget that one.
I felt very offended because the majority of the people that come here are coming here to work and have jobs that nobody else wants. Our economy, how much would a lettuce cost if you get a guy that you have to pay him health insurance, benefits, all this stuff? How much will the lettuce cost? How will this affect the economy? So I wanted to show the hardship of the people coming to the United States and also what they're doing. Like, obviously not the same immigrant, because some of them get caught in transit.
Right.
But do a project where I included people trying to immigrate to the United States, as well as people already in the United States that have immigrated.
Well, the images became something altogether different. So how did that initial idea sort of become transformed? Yeah.
Well, because you have two routes to go when you want to. I had two routes in my work to go and search for these immigrants. The first route was through the coyotes. I don't know if you know what a coyote is.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the first route. And where you say, you know what, I'll give you a certain amount of money if you let me go part of the trajectory with you guys, and so I can document how hard it is to cross.
And for people who are not aware, coyotes are the people that these immigrants usually pay in order to be able to get across the border. So
correct. So the answer from the people I contacted was always no, because what if I took a picture of them? Mm-hmm. What if I would expose them with my camera using the flash, or just following people along, right, and not, following a steady rhythm of how they should cross. So the answer was no. And then I went to churches and places where they gave asylum, I guess it's the word, refuge,
okay, right,
to potential immigrants, people from South America, from other parts of Mexico that are barely had enough money to cross and have not yet crossed. Where do they stay? So they stay a lot of times in churches, hostels that are specially for them. So I tried on that route as well. And they were very scared that I would take their picture. If they cross, they will be deported. And, there was just fear.
Mm-hmm.
But within the social workers that I interacted, explaining my project and trying to say, you know what, I want to do something on social justice. I think this needs to be explored. There was a woman that said, look, I know you reached every outlet in Juarez as far as trying to show immigration, and all the doors have closed. But the maid of a church where I work said that she could take you to the brothels if you were interested. Mm. So when I got the call that basically my project was going to hell, she also gave me, I guess maybe she felt sorry for me, who knows. She just gave me the opportunity with this woman to take me to the brothels. So that's how it came. It was just chance. It was, things aligned in that way.
So what lets you be open to that? Because some people would say, no, this is the project I want to do, and I'm just going to keep trying to make it happen. And because this is a much different tangent than you had anticipated. So, what convinced you that maybe that you can sort of explore similar themes and ideas, focusing on the prostitutes that work in these brothels?
Well, when I heard that, to be honest, I was like, do I really want to do that? Especially because growing up in Juarez, the border town of El Paso, Texas, you see the typical cliche of the girls with like the glitter, midi skirts, sleeping with the American tourist. And I thought that's what I was going to see. Mm-hmm. Like, I was like, why do I need this woman to take me if I can just like drive there and see it?
Right.
But it wasn't the case. I gave it a chance. I'm like, I have my camera here. I'm already here. I'm ready. Might as well, see what I can shoot. Mm-hmm. So I just did it. But when we got inside, it was the social worker that drove us. And it was the social worker, myself, and the former prostitute. So when we were driving, they're going to the opposite side of the town.
Okay.
From where I thought we were going. We're going to the side of town that my dad always told me, don't ever go there. That's the side of town that we were going to.
Okay.
So once I arrived to the brothels, I was like, oh my God, I need to document this. Especially after hearing the stories. First of all, the first woman I interviewed, I talked to, she was very scary looking. I've never met a heroin addict before in my life. And this woman had been raped at the age of 6. I mean, just a brutal life that made her very rough. Mm. So when I was asking her to pose for me, I offered her a cigarette. I'm like, hey, you want a cigarette? Let's smoke together. Tobacco. So I'm like, so how did you get here? What were the circumstances that brought you here? And I didn't know if she was going to slap me, if she was going to say none of your business, mm-hmm. or if she's going to tell me what happened. So as soon as she starts talking and like expressing what happened to her, I got my journal. So like, I never knew that I was going to put text with the photographs. I thought that a picture spoke a million words.
Right.
In this case, I thought that it would make it so much more powerful if you could know what happened to this woman and not only see the photograph, but actually know her life. And instead of judging her because she's a prostitute, see, oh my God, she has been tormented since the age of 6. Her mother kicked her out of the house at the age of 13 when she found out that her stepfather was raping her. Mm. She ended up being a prostitute. But how can you judge somebody like that? So that's why the text became such an important part of it. And then the more I took pictures, the more I interacted with this woman. The story was like usual. I started here at the age of 15. I started here at the age of 14. No 15 or 14-year-old just decides to become a prostitute. Something happens. And this is just the world of exploitation. And how do you expose it? So for me, it was very important to deglamorize prostitution. I think prostitution has been very glamorized in the media. And that's cool, but you hardly ever see the other side of the coin. Maybe because it's very painful.
Right. So considering that you yourself had gone in with a sort of an expectation of who these women are and how they got there and the choices that they made and the way you sort of envisioned, because you described a very, them wearing the mini skirts, the makeup and all that other stuff. So here you hear the story of this woman. Now you have the opportunity to photograph her. What were your thoughts in terms of how you wanted to capture her in the photograph that changed as a result of hearing her story?
It was doing the story. So I only had 15 minutes per girl.
Okay.
That's it.
Wow.
That was my total amount of time to photograph. I had a flash. I didn't even have a tripod because I needed to have enough equipment that I could actually put it in a handbag and just leave because it's not very safe. As I've been going there through the years now, I take a little tripod, but nothing. I don't take more equipment that fits in my backpack. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So during those 15 minutes, while they're telling me the story, I will be photographing them. And also it has to do a lot with light. The light's very minimum in the brothels. So how is flash going to play a part without overexposing the picture? What are the most interesting features? For instance, in the case of Claudia, her most interesting features were her eyes. They were like full of hate, piercing. It was very important that I captured that. But also I wanted to capture the decaying of the walls in the environment.
You say you only had 15 minutes initially in this first brothel that you visited. How many women did you photograph and interview that first time?
Well, I only do 10 at a time, but I've been doing this for 3 years. And I go like one day, only 10. One day, only 10. One day, only 10. The reason why I do this is because I can't carry a lot of... I pay them. I pay them the same amount of money as a gentleman.
Okay.
You could want to call him that. So if I carry too much cash, that's putting me in risk. So I have to have enough to hire some girls, but not enough so it's worthwhile for them to attack me or for somebody to attack me. So I figured that 10 was the right number.
Okay. So, what were you contending with? Because you say you visited these brothels where these women work. Who was responsible? Who was, basically the owner of these establishments? Were they, were they independent pimps or madams? Were they members of the cartel? What was the story there with the various brothels that you visited?
It varied from brothel to brothel. There were some brothels that were from the cartels where I couldn't get in. And one time I was actually able to get in and they kicked me out, and not in a very friendly manner. But so there's everything. There's by gangs that are dealing with drugs. So basically the gang there is selling the heroin and they sleep with a client and boom, they'll buy the heroin from them. So and then there's others that are just like a woman owning the hotel. They'll give money to the woman. So it varies, but they're all in the same area.
So how did your access to the brothels sort of evolve and change? Because you said the initial, the first woman sort of greased the wheels for you to be able to get in, but subsequently, did the work that you've done previously, was that an advantage? Because you'd already photographed in one brothel, or did you always have to start from scratch?
Not really, because I hadn't gotten exposure to it. So like I could tell them about it or show them pictures, like when I printed them. For them, it meant like absolutely nothing. It was more a matter of, you're here, we are taking a break, we need the money, and we need somebody to talk to because nobody listens to us. Also, when they were like asking about the project, I'm like, well, this is about the same thing, deglamorizing prostitution, and also to not have judgment, to try to take the judgment away from the prostitute. Because I've never met the girls with the mini skirts. I never have photographed that sector. But the sector that I did photograph, needs a lot of compassion.
So how did your perspective change on these women as a result of hearing their stories and spending time with them?
Well, it changed tremendously. Because you realize they're not there because they want to be there. They haven't chosen this path. There's some, for instance, that I photographed that their mothers sold them into prostitution at a very young age. These girls are not there because they want to be there. And they get so hooked on heroin, or crack, but mostly heroin, that it's almost impossible for them to leave. So it's, you start seeing the dynamics, like how deep they are in this hole. Many of them come from very rural areas in Mexico, so they have a third grade education, right? So this is the problem, that to work in a factory, for instance, Juarez has a booming economy in the twin plants, American companies that want to build cheap products or whatever, or assembly lines in Mexico. They require a 7th grade education. These girls are not eligible for that type of job. So what are their choices? Many of them ended up in Juarez trying to go to the United States and were separated from the families on the trajectory and ended up in the brothels. So then you have a problem again of immigration. And who's taking these girls? You get a 13, 14-year-old girl cut up, they get the parents, they don't get her. What's her destiny?
Yeah. You mentioned that, you were going into a very risky situation. And I read about, one time where you really had to get out of there really quickly. Tell me about that.
I was in the hotel that was led by the cartels. And one of the guys had let me in, but not the head, like one of the lower level guys that was just there. Well, the head came over and figured out that I was there because the girls started getting in line for me to take their picture. It's easy money and it's fun. I'm like, I make them laugh or like that. I make it relaxing for them, the photograph. So it's more intimate. So it's not posed. It's more dynamic. And they just started knocking on the door and they're like, you have 3 minutes to get all your shit and leave. If not, you're going to regret it. So we carried, that's why I like carrying my stuff only in a backpack. And I knew that specific brothel, you wouldn't mess with those guys. And I think it was very stupid of me to have gone there.
When people close to you realized what you were doing, what was the kind of response that you get? What was the reaction you got from family and friends?
Well, my family didn't know. I let my family know when I had the show. But before, I was doing it every time I went home. I would go on my journeys. I would do it. Say I was with friends, shooting, Never did they imagine I was in that part of town shooting and doing what I was doing. I didn't think it was worth telling them and worrying them until I had something concrete. So when I had the show, then I was like, look, I did this, and this is the result, So now they're like, okay, it's your life. You know what you're doing.
I can imagine that they were shocked, though, when you told them and where you were doing all
my
this.
father.
Oh,
yeah.
What did he say to you, if you don't mind me asking?
He's like, you know what? You're a grown woman. I can't stop you. So, and he's right.
I'm curious. You say you grew up in Juarez, and there's an unusual dynamic that is unlike other parts of the country, in which, with towns and that are really close to the border, there is a relationship with immigration that doesn't exist if you're in Missouri or if you're in Washington. And growing up, when did you start becoming aware that different people were considered differently as a result of living so close to the border and the whole dynamic of the issue of immigration? Well,
in El Paso and Juarez, it's a little bit of a phenomenon because everybody speaks Spanish in El Paso. So there's a lot of people that are Hispanics that were born in El Paso, Texas, but just happen to be of Mexican descent. So you don't see that much prejudice because we all kind of look the same.
All right.
And Spanish is it's a language that's spoken a lot in El Paso. But you always know, for instance, when I went to school in El Paso, Texas. So I would cross the border every day. I have, I had my papers and whatever. I crossed the border. But you would see, back in, I'm 40 years old, but back in the day, you could see the people crossing the Rio Grande, with no shame, just crossing. And then they would cross back after they finished their shift. So made dollars, go back to Mexico. So you always knew that was part of the economy. Now things are very different.
Yeah.
You have dogs, you have gays, you have everything.
Did you start perceiving that some people who were coming without papers, that somehow that they were looked at differently, not just by, other people who may have been born here or who identified more as American than Mexican? When did you sort of observe that even though initially you may not have seen much prejudice in terms of how people who looked the same treated each other, but at some point you probably, I would assume, started seeing that, okay, there is some differentiation.
I saw it here. I saw it when I moved to Philadelphia.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Tell me about that.
I mean, I've had everything from, I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born in El Paso, Texas. Mm-hmm. However, I grew up in Mexico.
Okay.
But I consider my heritage is Mexican. I grew up in Mexico, so I consider myself more Mexican, even though I have dual nationality. Mm-hmm. Anyway, when I'm here in Philadelphia, there's like people, I can't understand a word you're saying. What? You don't speak English? Like, the way people treat you in the stores and, just you deal with prejudice. Here I felt it.
Yeah.
Over there in El Paso, well, I didn't feel it. Here, you can see it.
So how did that sort of inform what you wanted to do in terms of immigration? Because you said initially it was, the comments made by Trump in terms of that inspired, but did some of those personal experience help to sort of ignite the spark that you wanted to?
Absolutely. I mean, because I'm Mexican, I'm here. I could have been born in Mexico for practical purposes, but I'm here doing a good thing, participating in the economy, not hurting anybody, at the contrary, being an activist, and still they want to throw us all out. Mm-hmm. We're not good. Why? So those are the sentiments I felt like, okay, so you have people that come here from Central America, Mexico, you name it. They're happy to come here and clean toilets. Nobody else is like used to go to McDonald's, to go to all these places. See, very like the majority of the people that you see are people from an ethnic background, mm-hmm. and still you want to throw us all out. Why? I mean, not everybody is a criminal. At the contrary, the majority of the people here are hardworking, and they're not criminals. It's just being racist.
When it comes to creating content for some of my clients for a video or a multimedia project, I've sometimes had to rely on work other than my own. That's especially the case when the client has a limited budget but really high expectations. For moments like this, I've had to use a stock library for stills, video, or audio. Storyblocks provides a solution that's wonderfully affordable and provides income for the content creators themselves. Because Storyblocks provide you access to high-resolution photo, vectors, or images that are all royalty-free. And for the creators who contribute their work, it's also great because they enjoy 100% of the sales commission. You won't find that anywhere else. To find out more, go to storyblocks.com/candid to get all the stock images, video, and audio you can imagine for just $149. That's storyblocks.com/candid to download anything from thousands of images, video, and tracks, and unlock discounts for millions more. So you're an interdisciplinary artist. So you're not just photography, you're into painting. Did you start primarily as a painter and sort of incorporate photography later? So tell me about the initial interest in painting and working with different materials and why that was an allure to start with.
Well, I was trained in Italy, came to the United States, and I loved painting, and I would paint and my paintings would sell. So I mean, it just, it made sense to keep painting. Then I started working with gold leaf and working with Aztec symbols or symbols that resembled my heritage in Mexico. And I always had an interest in drawing people, but I was not that good at it. I knew how to do it. I was trained to do it, but I just didn't feel I could do it the way I want to do it.
Okay.
And with photography, it gave me the chance to basically paint with the camera, using referencing the art history positions that I love into the women that I photograph.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they're nudes, I want to bring them dignity. How do you do that? You put them in poses that were used by the masters. So it's not pornographic, it's pure art.
Right.
And I felt that the camera could give me that, and my hands couldn't.
One of the things that I've heard you describe about your work is that you like to derive a lot of inspiration from symbolism, which has a long history in Mexican and Native American art from down in Mexico. Iconography is a big part of how you like to use your work, both as a photographer and as an artist. What's the appeal there?
I don't know. I just think there's something mystical about it that really captures my eye. Searching for my ancestors. What are they trying to say? How can I bring those words into something contemporary? But yeah, a lot of soul searching from my background.
Yeah. So how did you start with the photography? Because was that part of your training in school, or did that something that came after you started a career as an artist? So I arrived to Philadelphia. I started taking, I arrived to Philadelphia 16 years ago. And I didn't have any friends when I first arrived here. So my dad's tip for me to make friends was, well, why don't you take a night class, a continuing ed class? So I started taking continuing ed classes for you name it. But among those were photography, and I just became hooked. Okay.
So every term, I would take a continuing ed class at different schools. All the time, different schools. I would do, let's say, drawing 1, drawing 2, or photography 1, photography 2, nighttime photography, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
But for 16 years, I've been all over the city in the continuing ed department because I can't afford to get another bachelor's or tuition. So I did the continuing ed.
And when did you start using photography in the way that you're using it now in terms of a documentary, social documentary?
This is the first time.
This is the first time. Wow.
I did a lot of photography, personal, beautiful scenery, my children, stuff that's interesting, but something where I said something that was powerful and that I wanted to give a message, mm-hmm. and that I thought that message was important. This is the first time.
Wow. You refer to the fact that you went down repeatedly over the span of 3 years to, make the photographs. And part of, working on a personal project, especially one that offers so many challenges as this, is that the goal and the intent evolves and changes over time. You may have started with an initial idea, but as you go out there, you make the photographs, you interact with your subjects, your perception in terms of what you're doing and how you're doing inevitably changes. And I'm wondering what changes occurred throughout the lifespan of the project so far that reflect that.
Well, obviously, the more I go, the more prepared I am for the light. So now I understand the light better. So I have a better lens. Mm-hmm. In terms of flash, that has been very difficult. Because sometimes the flash just dies on you. There's all sorts of technical difficulties, Murphy's Law, whatever. So you have to be very prepared with the flash. But the more I was able to now have a little tiny tripod that I can actually, put together. Mm-hmm. So I can do better photography. And then the stories I started evolving into, because now it's just the former prostitute Luli and myself who go to the brothels. The social worker doesn't go with us anymore. Yeah. She felt that it was too dangerous. So it's just her and me. So one of the things that I thought would keep us safer was if I changed, and instead of asking them about their life, ask them about the happiest moment in their life to bring you closer to that person. Mm-hmm. Is that she opened a gift in Christmas. Now you're relating. Now she's a human being.
Yeah.
So stuff like that I'm working on now, So when I was doing it, before I was doing the stories, as I've started doing it recently, I've been doing the happiest moment.
Mm. You know, one of the things I've read about is that many of the women that you photographed have died.
Yeah, and that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, and, you know, it may have been due to violence, due to drugs, due to whatever, for whatever reason. You know, that is something that's very difficult to get over. Even though your time with them was fairly limited, you still had intimate experiences with them. And I'm wondering how the reality that these women's lives can be cut short so abruptly, how that touches you both as a human being, and how that sort of informs what you're choosing to do. You just mentioned that you're focusing more on the positive end. Is that part and parcel of how you're responding to the fact that these women's lives can be, you know, can end so tragically?
Yeah, and it's also reminding them that they had a good moment, that their life is not just what it is now, that they have something to hold on to. For instance, I asked a woman, one of the things I do is I give the money of the photographs to charity. So one of the charities that I give the money to is Las Madres Oblatas, which is a group of nuns that help the women get rehabilitated and get them jobs, low-income jobs, but jobs. They're the group of women that help Luli, the former prostitute, get sober. And now she worked in the church, and now she's my friend, and she goes with me. So I believe in their system because I've seen the results with Luli. So I was interviewing one of the girls, and I said, what was the happiest moment in your life? And she started crying. And how her life is a disaster, and how she wants to change. So I told her, why don't you call the nuns? They will give you an opportunity. They'll get you the money to get to rehab. So she did. So just asking that question that touched her enough may have caused a difference.
Wow.
So it's not just an exercise for me, but it's also an exercise for them to make them think, oh my God, yeah, I was happy before. I had a good moment. A lot of women said that their children, the birth of their children, and seeing their faces. Now, you can relate that as a mother. So I think that is just as powerful as the stories, because it brings you together to that person.
Seeing what happened to these women, and knowing that you all shared a common sort of heritage, maybe a lot of similar life experiences as children. How did you end up changing? How did your perspective about your own life and your own opportunities shift or give you a different way of looking at it as a result of working with these women?
You feel very lucky. You're like, how can I possibly complain? I have it really good. And also you feel you owe it to the world to try to make a difference, because you were born, per se, with a silver spoon, and they were not. So what do you do in order to make a difference, to make change? In my case, I'm an artist, so the only way I can make change is through my art. If I were a physician or whatever, I would go and donate my time or skills, but I help with what I can.
Yeah.
And for instance, in the case of Claudia, for instance, I went back, I loved her picture, I loved taking pictures of her. She was just such a good person to photograph. I went back and she had gotten killed. And it's very sad that when I see the pictures, there's never going to be another picture of her again. That's it. She's done. She's gone. She's dead. It's not like a photograph by another photographer where you can get the same subject and take pictures of her or whatever. I can't. She's dead. So the pictures also show something powerful, that she's remembered. She's now part of history. She's not like anonymous. She's, there's a story behind her.
Yeah. When it came time to share the work, whether it was in an exhibition or in some other form, what were some of the challenges that you faced in terms of getting the work out there?
That it was too sad. So when I tried to show it in galleries, that it's too sad, too depressing. Who's going to want to buy it? So I covered the cost. I did it in this co-op gallery where I'm a member of, and it was my turn to show. So I told the gallery owner, hey, this is going to be my show. And so he allowed me to, but I was already a member of the gallery. But no, that when I'm applying to galleries all over the place, they're like, yeah, the work is strong, it's powerful, but it's very hard to sell. It's depressing.
It's really interesting to hear that, because one of the things that come to mind is that, in the history of photography, there is work by these famous men photographers that focused on prostitutes, right? And I think that it's interesting to hear that reaction to your work when some other work, which is readily exhibited in galleries and museums, where it's obvious that it's prostitutes that were being photographed for whatever reason, are considered art. And here, people are looking at it as images that, people don't want to see, which in a completely different context, people readily embrace. Do you see the sort of that contradiction? Have you observed that contradiction yourself?
Well, the thing is, people do want to see it. Like, I had a very high attendance to my show. I was covered by a lot of press. Very good collectors purchased my work. So I'm not that upset about the show itself. But going forward, when I'm trying to deal with galleries, it's very hard. So it's like, for the show, once I showed it, it was very positive. I sold way more than I was expecting to sell. But trying to move along, it gets difficult.
Yeah. One of the choices you've made is that you don't readily show those images on your site. Because of the different articles that have been written about you and your work, some of the images are able to be found, but you made a conscious choice not to sort of showcase them as on your site. And I'd like to hear as to why.
Well, I didn't want to risk the people of degrading the pictures with Photoshop, stealing them from the internet, and then putting words on them or making fun of them or something disrespectful to the girls. So I've looked, and you can find the images if you look hard.
Yeah.
So I've maybe putting a password so people can, like, the people that I think are in the art scene or the art, that they can take a look at it. Okay. Because I do want to have the pictures only be shown. If I'm going to show the pictures physically, it's only going to be shown in the arts. Okay. Or I just gave a lecture at the community college against women against trafficking. I showed the pictures there, but it's like a special scenario.
And are you continuing to work on this project?
Yes. I was just there in August.
Okay. So do you have sort of ultimate goal with the work? Do you not have a time where you think you'll be done and finished with it?
I don't know. I don't know when I'm going to be done. It's something that I enjoy doing. It's hard, but I've been doing that for a while, and I enjoy doing it. I think there's a story that needs to be heard. And sometimes I didn't nail certain pictures correctly because of the environment or the light or whatever. So I want to make pictures better, pictures clearer, to give a better message. But when am I going to be done? I don't know. I mean, right now I'm trying to get a grant for the project on immigration. But instead of immigration, focusing on deportation.
Okay.
So I can do two things at once because my family's in Juarez. So it's not necessarily very hard for me that when I go visit my family, I can also go to the brothels and take the pictures. It's not like a humongous production because I'm already there visiting my family. But the grants I'm trying to get are for something in deportation.
Okay. Well, my last question that I ask each guest is that I ask them to recommend another photographer for our listeners to discover and explore on their own. And it can be anyone, someone you've long admired or someone you've recently discovered. So who would that photographer be and why?
I think Gabriel Martinez.
And why?
He's phenomenal. He's just, I mean, you have to look at his work.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. It's a must. You have to see it. It's wonderful.
I'll look forward to checking it out. Well, Ada, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks to Ada for sharing her time and her story with us. Check out her photography by visiting adatrillo.com. And remember, I'll be in San Antonio, Texas for 4x5 Photo Fest on November 18th, conducting 2 live interviews for The Candid Frame. And in December, I'll be attending the Miami Street Photography Festival, where I'm conducting a masterclass. To find out more on both, click on the link in the show notes. And thank you all for your continued support of The Candid Frame. We are close to releasing 400 episodes, and I would love to see a host of 5-star reviews to help promote the show before then. If you haven't already, please take the time today to write a review in the iTunes Store. Your ratings and comments help people to discover the great conversations that we offer here at TCF. Thanks to Reader and STL for his 5-star review. You can also support the show by making a monthly contribution through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/The Candid Frame, or you'll find a link in the show notes and the Candid Frame website. Or if you just want to make a one-time contribution to the show, you can do so via PayPal by clicking on the donate button on the Candid Frame website or the show notes. To access our complete archive of interviews, download the free Candid Frame app, available for Apple iOS and Android. Not only will you immediately receive the latest episode on your phone or tablet, but you can now easily share your favorite episodes on your social networks and help spread the word. And if you want to drop me a line with comments or suggestions for the show, you can email me directly from the app. Download it today by clicking on the link in the show notes or the website at thecandidframe.com. The Candid Frame's audio engineer is Martin Taylor. You can find at theothermartintaylor.com. The show's senior producer is Cynthia Parker, and our music is from Kevin MacLeod, whose royalty-free music can be found at incompetech.com. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at simply @IbarioNX. And this is Ibarionex, and this is The Candid Frame.